Not long after, the ship lay about 8 miles off the island of Ceylon in the Indian Ocean. Captain Nemo sought out the professor in the library. Ceylon is famous for its pearl fisheries. Would you and your friends care to visit one? That would be splendid. Good. We shall breakfast at 5 bells in the morning. By this early start, we may hope to avoid any of the local pearl divers. Oh, and how do you feel about sharks? I beg your pardon? Sharks. They are plentiful in these waters. We, of course, have grown used to them, and generally they stay clear of us, though on occasion we find it necessary to drive one off with a blow to the snout with a knife handle. Well, have a pleasant night. Shortly after the captain left, Conseil and Ned entered. Master, we have just had a most astonishingly civil conversation with the captain. He said we ought to go pearl diving. Ned threw himself into a chair. What do you know about them, Professor? About pearls? To the poet, a pearl is a tear of the ocean's eye. To a lady, it is a brilliant accent to her own beauty. While to a naturalist, it is simply the hardened secretion of a gelatinous mixture of phosphate and carbonate of lime. The pearl begins as a small, hard substance, a grain of sand, perhaps, inside the pearl oyster. Meleagrina margaritifera, said Conseil, as if this would help Ned. Irritated by the sand's presence, the oyster produces layers of the thick mixture around it. These layers later harden, and voila, a pearl. Can an oyster produce more than one pearl? Yes, one oyster can produce an abundance of sharks. Sharks? Oh, I beg your pardon, I meant to say an abundance of pearls. His friends exchanged a look. Is pearl fishing dangerous, Master? Of course not, if done correctly. By the way, Ned, do you have much experience with sharks? I've harpooned a good many. But if you are not in a boat, as long as I have my harpoon, I'll be all right. What do you think, Conseil? I think, Ned, tomorrow I am going to stay very close to you. Morning found them in the Nautilus's boat as the sun's first rays touched the island of Ceylon. With them were Captain Nemo and 4 of the crew, enough to prevent any attempt to escape. Captain Nemo told them, "Here in this sheltered bay are some of the best fisheries for us to visit. The boat will come back for us. Here are your daggers." No guns? No, Monsieur Conseil. Daggers will do. But Conseil was reassured to see Ned holding his harpoon as they slipped into the water. Below them, the sandy floor was covered with boulders of all sizes, and to these clung uncountable numbers of oysters. Captain Nemo showed them how to open these to obtain pearls, with which all the divers filled nets hanging by their sides. But then Captain Nemo gestured them back behind some boulders. Overhead, they glimpsed the bottom of a boat, from which a man suddenly dived into the water. Seemingly at random, he filled his bag with oysters, which he brought up to his boat. The diver repeated the process several times, until, in mid-dive, he suddenly turned and darted upward as fast as he could go, and they saw a great shark cutting straight through the water towards him. Before the man could reach his boat, the shark was on him, the diver swerving to evade it. But the shark's powerful tail struck the man's head, sending him unconscious to the ocean floor. As the shark circled back for its victim, Captain Nemo pushed off from behind the rocks and stood protectively over the fisherman. The shark went straight for the captain, who struck the beast's snout with his dagger handle. The shark moved off, but did not leave. Instead, it charged again. This time, the captain reversed his dagger and, shifting aside, buried the blade in the shark's side. The huge fish seemed to explode in fury, while Nemo tried to hang on to hold the dagger in place. But the shark shook loose and, opening its massive jaws, lunged for the captain. But suddenly, there was Ned Land. He plunged his harpoon into the shark and held on until all its movements ceased. Meanwhile, the others carried the unconscious fisherman up to his boat. Aronnax worked on him until the fisherman stirred and opened his eyes. But seeing the round copper heads above him, he drew back in fear until Captain Nemo, who had joined them, drew from his sack a bag of pearls, set them in the man's hand, and led the others back over the side. Later, safely back aboard the Nautilus, the captain's first words were, "Thank you, Mr. Land. You saved 2 lives back there." Ned replied, "Let's understand one another, Captain. I couldn't leave that man to die any more than you could. As for you, you could have killed us that first night on board. I was just paying the debt." Captain Nemo looked sharply at Ned, who returned his unwavering stare, and they said no more. For more titles from Jim Weiss and Well-Trained Mind Press, please visit us at jimweiss.com or welltrainedmind.com. Thank you for listening.